Do you remember when Joe Biden admitted that cutting CO2 emissions is pointless? No? That's because the mainstream media did not want you to. But he said it, and here's the clip.
The climate crisis is not our fight alone, it's a global fight. The United States accounts, as all of you know, less than 15% of carbon emissions. The rest of the world accounts for 85%. That's why I kept my commitment to rejoin the Paris Accord, because if we do everything perfectly, it's not going to only matter.
And it's not just Joe Biden. Here's John Kerry.
The fact is that even if every single American citizen biked to work, carpooled to school, used only solar panels to power their homes, if we each planted a dozen trees, if we somehow eliminated all of our domestic greenhouse gas emissions, guess what? That still wouldn't be enough to offset the carbon pollution coming from the rest of the world. If all the industrial nations went down to zero emissions, remember what I just said, all the industrial nations went down to zero emissions, it wouldn't be enough.
The point of this video is to agree with Joe Biden and John Kerry and say that reducing our emissions is pointless. Why? China. So I'm going to play a clip for you here, and I'm going to talk along with it, and it'll illustrate in a very clear manner why we should not even try to cut our emissions. Before I play the clip, let's just take a look at what it's showing. So it's showing millions of tons of CO2 emitted per year. China's on the left and G7 countries are on the right. The G7 countries are Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, the United States, and the rest of the EU. Okay, so in 1959, we can see G7 countries are emitting way more than China. China's staying around the 400 to 500 mark, going up and down a bit. But, and again, this is in million tons of CO2 emitted. By the 1970s, G7 countries are kind of revolving around 10,000 and 9,000. By the 80s, they're at about 11,000. China hasn't moved up much. They've been around 1.5 thousand this entire time. So we're nearing the 1990s. China's at around a little over 2,000. G7 countries are kind of staying stable around 11,000. By 95, China's hit 3,000, but still, it's G7 countries just heavily outpacing China. And here's the climb. So the climb occurs around 2001, 2002, and it's because China actually started to liberalize their economy, you could say. But yeah, by 2013, I mean, we're nearing the point where China's almost equaling G7 countries. And by 2019, we can see that China is basically right there with all G7 countries. And what this doesn't show you is that by 2021, China actually went ahead and passed the G7 countries. So Joe Biden is correct. We could cut all of the United States emissions to zero, which is about half of what the G7 countries emit. But that's all it'll do. So we'd be cutting G7 emissions by about half, and China already outpaces the G7 countries. And anyone who thinks that China really cares about the environment or, cutting their CO2 emissions to be better in the world is laughably ignorant about what China is. Because I think most people that watch these videos actually know that, but if you don't, China does not care about the environment. They'll say like, oh yeah, we're going to follow the Paris Climate Accord, and then they're building more coal power plants than anyone, which I don't have an issue with. I'm just saying it's hypocritical to be like, yeah, we should cut all of our emissions and not point out what China's doing. So the mainstream media, or as I like to say, corporate media, and the reason for that is the people on the left do not like corporations. And generally when you're arguing about climate change stuff, you're arguing with people on the left. So if you say the corporate media and the mainstream media is corporate based, it's corporate interests, then that kind of already puts a dent in their armor about what they're arguing about. So yeah, trust me, call it the corporate media. It's a great term. It came from Michael Malice, I believe, but it's a great term. But so the left and the corporate media do not want to kill this we can cut our emissions to zero and it won't do anything, or they want to kill this narrative because it destroys the entire global warming, we got to do something argument, which makes you also wonder, like, if we could cut our emissions to zero and it'll do nothing, like, why are we trying? And that's often because the climate change argument isn't really about climate change. It's about greater command and control over the economy. And the way to do that is through CO2 emissions. Then government can also pick winners and losers. They're doing this through ESG scores. I would urge you to check out Stopping Socialism TV. It's on YouTube if you want to learn more about that. But yeah, so that's what this is. This is literally just a way to control the economy and has nothing to do with climate. Because if we cut our emissions to zero, it will do nothing. So Joe Biden, John Kerry, they admitted it. No one covered it. It's good for you to know. Also, if you're watching these videos, please share them. That's how we can get seen more on YouTube. YouTube does not like the climate change issue. And by that, I'm saying they like one side, and it's not this side. So yeah, it would really help us out. This is Andy with the Heartland Institute, bringing you more from climaterealism.com. I hope this helped. Peace. Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our channel and consider donating to the Heartland Institute to support more vibrant free markets, greater individual liberties, and more videos like this one.